Ladies, gents, Origin is done. Means we have a little bit more of a clearer picture into how things are going to play out in round 14. Are we going to have a lot of guys back up? Are we going to have a bunch of guys miss games? And just remember, majority of the time, these guys get named either in the starting side or an extended squad. And we'll see probably somewhere between a 60-40 split of guys playing and guys obviously being rested. A couple of guys are already getting rested there with Hammer, and my God, he deserves it. He played an incredible game. And then Gilbert, unfortunately, was the guy that got injured last night. From what we know, there's maybe a few guys playing with some niggles, but we'll find out a little bit more today. But Gilbert has the dislocated shoulder. Not too fantasy relevant, but he was getting rested. Anyway, Scoop, welcome in. What did you think of the game last night? And your bloody Maroons got us.
Yeah, it was a bit of a strange Origin game, and the build-up was weird too, being in Adelaide, advertised strange. But the second half particularly was pretty good. They, it it just seemed like Queensland were able to keep coming when you thought it was impossible, and they always somehow seem to do it. Like they go a man down, and then they score 2 tries to win it. Lindsay Collins out jumping Tedesco. You can't write that sort of stuff. It's wild.
Oh, it's incredible, especially being teammates as well. I forgot about that until they mentioned it at one point. I just want to say something early on. The complete bagging of Teddy and how he plays, I just think is so unwarranted. He's been our best for so long. Yes, he hasn't played great this year, but then it's like anything that happens to him in that game. He did a lot of good things, but any times he did something that wasn't as good, he just got absolutely slammed. And just remember, Lindsay Collins is a big man. He's an athlete. Teddy timed it perfectly. He jumped up. Collins just bigger, and that's as simple as that, right? Like it was just the perfect play in the end, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. It was a very interesting way to go about it, and definitely caught them off guard, and managed to come away with the win. So up to the Cauldron in Queensland for Origin 2. That'll be a tough one for New South Wales to come back from, but it's possible. Anything can happen in Origin.
Yeah, that's the big issue, isn't it? Heading to Queensland for game 2. But our focus on this, there's obviously plenty of other podcasts that'll go right through that game. But let's go through the potential injury fallout and restings from this game. So I've got it up on my screen now. We'll go through the Queensland team first, and Reece Walsh, an incredible game from him. With how do you think it plays out just as an overall? With if you're the Queensland team and you win, do you think there's a little bit more chance that a few of those guys just enjoy it and have a little bit of a rest, and then a lot of the Blues guys, there's more of a chance that they'll back up? Do you see that as a thing that plays out over the years?
That's quite a possibility that might happen, especially for guys that were on the younger side, like Reece Walsh on his debut game. Getting used to the intensity of Origin, I would say he's a prime candidate to be rested this week. Even, I don't think Hammer was named at all, so
No.
probably not him. Probably the New South Wales guys that I would expect to back up but get reduced minutes or reduced game would be guys like Payne Haas and Junior Paulo and Murray and things like that. There's a bit of a schmozzle with the minutes on NRL.com last night. We all thought for a while that Payne Haas only played 30 minutes. What's Freddie doing? But no, he was definitely there in the second half and got about 50 minutes instead. So I'd say reduced minutes, even if it's not by that much, maybe 5, 10, 15 less minutes than he usually gets for his 60. But I'd say he'll play. He's a machine. Maybe just a few less than usual.
Yeah, let's go back to that Queensland squad there. And Walshy, would you expect him to back up or no?
I would probably have him as one of the more likely to be rested, but if there's a chance. Brisbane's doing well on the ladder. I think he's one of the guys who could probably be rested, given that Tristan Saylor did a very good job at fullback with Walsh out last week.
Yeah, that's the thing. They've got a nice replacement for him, don't they? And they're on top of the table. So I think, he's a prime candidate. Let's go to Munster then. Do we think that he's a decent chance of being rested, or would he play?
That's a tough one. I'm not sure which way it'll fall for Munster. I think he might back up because Storm aren't like absolutely dominant top of the table. I mean, they're up there though, so there's a good chance he might. It's whether they try and push for that top 4 spot and consolidate with the strong team, or just go, we're close enough. We can give these guys a bit of a break.
Yeah. And guys, we are recording this on Thursday morning, so we will find out more across today and obviously tomorrow as well. But there will be a lot of these players that will be given up till game day. So it's kind of, just basing a little bit off what happened last night. Also a little bit off prior experience. DCE and Manly, they have a bye anyway, but he's someone that is always a prime candidate to just back up for his club. So, there are a bunch of these guys that are a little bit more prone to resting, and it does compare, with how they're sitting on the table as well, as to if they're going to back up at all. Guys like Tom Flegler, with the 20 minutes that he played, you'd expect him to back up and play. So there's a few things like that. Ben Hunt playing 52, you'd expect him to play as well. So there's a few like that. Lindsay Collins, I'm in a bit of a mix with him. I'm not sure if he will back up or not, but again, not super interesting or relevant. Dave Fafita playing 71 minutes, so had a little bit of a head knock as well, and there was some worries. He was suffering Cat 2 symptoms. I think there's a great chance that he does rest, and I actually really hope that he does, to be honest with you. Obviously not owning him, and actually traded him out in Supercoach last week as well. So, what do you think about the Fafita situation?
Yeah, if he hadn't had that head knock, I reckon he would have probably backed up, maybe played 60 minutes. But yeah, I think they will go on the safer side and just give him that week off with that second degree symptoms. I think the most likely out of everybody to be rested is probably Ruben Cotter. That bloke is just an Origin player. He's a workhorse. He's a machine. He's man of the match and full 80 minutes. I think that, he could, he's like Payne Haas. He could back up and play a few reduced minutes, but I think he might be one that they look to rest.
Yeah, I agree with that. Carrigan got 66 minutes and Grant 57. You expect Grant to play for the Storm with the 57-minute game, and then got Tino with the 41. I expect him to back up as well, unless any of these guys are carrying any niggles, but I didn't see anything other than Gilbert. Teddy had a bit of when he tried to save that try there, he put his leg out in front and got that whacked, but he seemed to be fine after that. Carrigan 66 minutes, maybe some less minutes for the Broncos this week. I'd expect him to play. If you own him, you'd be fine to hold.
Yeah, I think so. I think most of these guys are going to get about 10 minutes less. Maybe Tom Flegler plays close to normal minutes.
Yeah.
But I'd expect guys like Cobry Hetherington to step up and take a bit of that workload this week.
Beautiful. Some big news with the Blues. Tom Trbojevic, Cat 1 symptoms, unfortunately. So there's a good chance he misses round 15 as well. Would that be correct?
Yes, I think that's in 9 days. So the next game he's eligible to play is actually Origin 2.
Yeah, wow. Okay, so if you're still holding on to him and you're trying to get a good price rise out of him after his massive score in round 12 there, then that's very unfortunate. He probably won't play till like round 17. So I think he's definitely a sell, guys. Move him on if you can. James Tedesco, let's hope. Anyway, I own him. Let's hope that he does back up. To'o, yes or no, I think it doesn't really matter. I think there's not a lot to own him, but either way, I think it's a 50-50 for him. Addo is the interesting one, considering he really only just got fit just before Origin. Would you expect he doesn't get moved from that extended into the starting side?
That is a very good point, because he did have a long layoff, and playing 2 games, such a short turnaround after just coming back, I would say he is more likely to be rested.
Yep. And then the Cleary-Luai combination, I think with the 4, they played the last game of the round. I think the 4 days rest and then wanting to kind of avenge this loss helps a little bit. If they did get the win, then I think there's a high chance that they just go, you deserve a bit of a rest. Where top of the table, right up there as well. So I think that they'll play, and they both seem to get through it unscathed as well. So good news for Cleary and Luai there. You've got Tavita Pangai. I expect him to actually back up the 27 minutes. I think didn't do anything stupid, which was good from a Blues perspective, but I think he'll be straight into that dog side. Api Coruscant's an interesting one. I doubt that the plan for him was to play 80 minutes, but such a stop-start game, he got the 80. I just feel like he won't play for the Tigers this week. Do you agree?
Yeah, there was always the worry that with these 2-day turnarounds for Api Coruscant, he's got 2 out of the 3 games where he's got a 2-day turnaround. If he's going to play those massive minutes, I would think he'd be rested, and then potentially someone like Jake Simpkin might get 4 games starting. But, his break-even's so high after all those low games that you probably wouldn't go for either Appy or him.
Yeah. I thought Frizzell had a pretty good game, but he has a bye this week. Doesn't really matter. Hudson Young, the 30 minutes. I actually expect him to play on Friday night. Do you?
Yeah, lowish minutes. He won't take too much to back up.
Isaiah Yeo, another 80-minute effort. I expect if he does play, for those that still own him, that he surely doesn't play the full 80 for the Panthers on the weekend. For once, surely.
Yeah. Yeah, you'd think if he does play, James Fisher-Harris, as often happens, might take up the slack and get an extra 10 or 15 minutes.
Yeah, good chance Spencer Leniu comes back as well. Junior Barlow there, they have a bye. That's not going to matter for them. Cam Murray, 50 minutes. I do expect him to play. Maybe 50 minutes as well for those guys. Liam Martin was an absolute beast. I'm so impressed with him and his efforts and that lovely try. 61 minutes for him. Again, one of those guys that's coming back from sort of injuries. He did a great job in this one. If he does play, I expect 35 to 40 minutes from him off the bench there. And then Nicho Hines, I'm expecting him to play the full 80 for the Sharks and be my captain this week. Do you agree?
Yeah, 12 minutes, that's not going to affect much of anything this week for club footy. Put the C on him if you own.
Beautiful. All right. That's that there. Let's go through. I just want an interesting one. You click on footystats.com and what we've got here is the who's not list. So the percentage of change since lockout in the selling category. I just want to give you a name on here. The 7th man on the list, most traded out, Jermaine Hopgood. Wow.
Why? I don't understand that.
You can have a look at this list. It's all guys just on the buy. Once we get past the first bunch. Hopgood, Cartwright. Who else you got? Mitch Moses down there as a sell. Gutho, yeah, fair enough. But yeah, those three there is hilarious. So yeah, it's just the amount of people.
Why would you be?
Yeah, he's not playing this week.
Why would you be upset with the 60?
Yeah, exactly. No, it's just the fact that he's on a buy. So if you're any of you guys that have done that watching this, please reverse that one. If you're looking at Gutho, he's not a keeper. That's completely fine. But the other three, or the other two, like Cartwright, is going to make some money again and score well on the weekend. Hopgood and Moses, terrible trade out. So avoid that. Everyone else in that list, completely fine. Yeah, Latrell, I think you just have to trade him out with the calf injury. Brandon Smith, Jack Bird, all the guys we want to be trading out. But just wanted to note that, guys, that you should not be moving on from those couple. Okay, let's go to Jake Turpin and kick things off with the hookers. So we'll go Turpin into Liddle. 337 for Jake. What are your general thoughts on him? When he gets decent minutes, he's going to make money, right, at 337. Would you be looking to buy him? And I suppose we need to talk about the situation in terms of your cover as well. So I personally have a Reece Robson. So Turpin's going to be very helpful for round 15 for me. But then I would be in that position where I have 2 available round 16 hookers. So thoughts on Turpin and then thoughts on combinations.
Yeah, I really like Jake Turpin. I think that Hutchison will take minutes from him, but I don't know how many. If he can push out 55 or 60 minutes and get at least 35 or high 30s, he's got 5 weeks to do the job, because I think Cheese has got another 6 weeks out, and the one that's the last week, that's a buy. So 5 weeks to make some reasonably slow but good cash. I think he's a really good bring-in this week, considering that there's not many cheapies or good cash cows mid-season.
Yeah, and very much a tackle bot, right? He's similar to the Phoenix Crossland mold. I would expect, and Crossland's been able to make a fair bit of cash. But just looking at some of his scores when he gets, let's just say, over 50 minutes, we'd expect more. But let's have that as a base. He's got 42, a 28. He's got a 29. That's in 52 minutes. These are the low end. You've got a 57 in 72 minutes. And you got 35, 33, 38, 31. So these are some of the low ones, obviously. When he has some 80-minute efforts, there's a 35, a 53, 32, 66, 62, 56, 55. So there's some really good scores, and then another 53 below that. So there's a lot of them there where you can just tackle for 45, 50, and kind of get you some really good scores. And if he happens to do that, then he's going to obviously make a fair bit of cash. He can cover obviously around 15 or around 16. Is there any world where you wouldn't bring him in? Like maybe if you have 2 hookers or something like that?
If you already have somebody who covers the round 16 buy, it's not as urgent. So if you have Robson, as you were saying, you don't absolutely need him, because it won't fill up your 13. You're just purely using him as a moneymaker, and probably that round 15 cover instead of that round 16 cover. So look, he's not a must, but he's quite a good buy this week.
Yeah, and then the break-even's a little bit higher as well in the low 20s. So not a must, but yeah, there's someone that I'm looking at. If you need to make a double trade this week, or you need a 17 scorer is something as well. If there's a couple of these guys that don't back up, if you're sitting with Haas that may not back up, or Walshy or something like that, then you need that 17th guy. Then he's a great slot in for sure. Jacob Liddle, on the other hand, so obviously has that little bit more attacking upside than Terps. Doesn't seem to make as many tackles, but we did see him make 53 on the weekend, which I think was definitely a bit of an outlier. He has a couple of games where he goes like into the 40s, but yeah, never a 50s type of guy. Apart from a game, one game here or 2 games here in 2021. So Liddle at 470, obviously more expensive, a little bit of a lower break even this week, and does miss round 16 and round 20. So yeah, if you have a Robson, he's someone that you could pair him pretty well with, right? But would you be looking at Liddle this week, or would you look to avoid as well?
I'd be interested in Liddle, but the problem is you want to see what the minutes are going to be with Ben Hunt there and then Sullivan on the bench, as opposed to what happened last week. And by that time, he might be over 500k and some of the money making's gone. So look, there's a bit of a risk, and you can jump on if you like. He's got about a 49 average in 65 minutes, but I mean, who's to say he does get 65 minutes? He looked pretty gassed out there at the end of last game. I think he got 71 minutes, so if more like 55 to 60 minutes and mid 40s, I think is more realistic, which is a little bit more borderline in terms of buy.
Yeah, well, when you look at Turpin in sort of 60 to 65, which you'd imagine he does get in this one, he can score similar to that anyway, can't he? He's that bit cheaper, so, and we'll play that extra game. Yeah, with only 1 buy remaining, with the Dragons having 2 left. So I definitely think that he obviously has the ceiling, which is cool. If you want that, then great. If not, Turpin's the man if you need a hooker. But obviously, for those that potentially have the 2 hookers there, if you have the Robson and Damien Cook, then I think you'll avoid both, most likely. You need to bring in cash cows or guys that really fit your buy planning as well at the moment, rather than just focusing on pure cash in that one as well. So now, if you do only have the 1 hooker and you're looking to maybe you do have Robson and you're looking to pair him with another good hooker, then Damien Cook, would you still pick him?
Given that Api Coruscant is probably the best member of the spine for the Blues, I think his position's pretty safe, and Cook is probably going to play round 19 now. So I would say, yes, Cook's still a pretty good buy. He hasn't been as good this year, but I mean, he's still probably a top 3 hooker, and you'll probably want at least 2 of Grant's, Robson, and Cook to end the year. At least 2 of those in combo.
Yes, that's how I look at it. Hey, it's if you bring him in now, he's a keeper for the rest of the year. My only issue is that he has not had a bye yet. So you're going to miss him for 3 games in that next 14. So something to think about for sure. Do you think that's something you should think about, or would sway you away, or no?
Yeah, definitely. Look, there's a play to be made that you buy him now and sell in round 26 when he has that last buy to somebody that plays the last 2 games. But in that case, you'd need to make sure you have extra trades. I would say that given there are going to be a few restings and then the Rabbitohs and the Eels have the last 2 buys, you're going to need quite a few trades to spare come the back end of the season, or you'll end up playing with like 14 or 15. So, look, Cook's a good play. I don't know if he's the best play if you're low on trades, though.
Yeah, lucky you with those extra trades, hey, look. Let's talk about Pasami Saulo. So he's actually on the Who's Hot list. So a lot of people actually bring him in after that 49 on the weekend. This screams trap to me.
Yeah, it's a strange one. And particularly given Young only got 30 minutes. And although he got under the skin of the Queenslanders, he didn't do a massive amount other than that. He could be still in the team for the Raiders, and Saulo might get moved back to the bench. So, look, he could be good for 1 or 2 weeks, but really, I don't really expect him to get up to that 400k mark.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's right. It could be 2 weeks of a little bit of a cash rise, but he could also get sort of a 41-minute effort, which he got 24 points, and that just ruins everything. So, yeah, he's got a couple of good scores in there. He obviously went gangbusters on the weekend. He did have a line break as well. He had no negatives. So, yeah, a perfect game for him. Couple of games until they're bye, and then things will kind of shake out. You'll get Whitehead back eventually, and everything will go back to normal. So yeah, that's a no for me on that one. I get he's cheap, but someone who's a little bit more expensive, but has a little bit more, I think, ability to score well, be a starter in your team. Jaden Okunbor, very interesting one, isn't he? At a negative break even, obviously coming off 2 games through off the interchange, through the middle, making good tackles, which he kind of has done for a little bit of time now. Most of his interchange games have been in the middle of the park. And he's been able to score fairly well. There is one game there he had a bit of a shocker where he had 72 minutes, 31 tackles, and 29 points, but that did include a couple of penalties, a sin bin, and the like. But these last 2 games, do you think there's more of that to come, especially in potentially an 80-minute effort on the edge?
Oh, I don't like him as much as some other guys, given that Faitala Mariner is supposed to be back next week, and Luke Thompson not around the corner, but not too far away. So, look, he could be a solid moneymaker for a few weeks again, maybe a bit longer than Saulo, but I don't know if he's going to get up to that 500k. I would think that moving forward, even if he does start in that edge spot, that he won't get 80 with Faitala Mariner back from next week.
We also got to think about Vil Kickow.
Yes. When's he back? It's about around 20.
Yeah, I think he
21.
had a fairly long one, but yeah, that's right. That's still
there we go.
Yeah, it's probably enough
around
time.
22. There we go. So a little way away yet.
You say 22?
Yep.
Okay, right. So that doesn't make too much of a difference then for Okunbor, does it? So, well, my big thing, if you are very interested, he has worked his way into that spot. They've changed him mid-year. He has done really well in that position, and then they go, okay, you deserve a start now. So yeah, there's something to that. Jacob Preston came in and he worked his way into a starting spot. So, and now he's kept it and he's owned it. Corey Waddell obviously hasn't as much. He had a bit of a shocker in his previous game, so many missed tackles and the like. He's never really been a consistent starter in the NRL, whereas Okunbor has come out and shown ability to score tries and kind of give them a bit of attack, which is something they do lack. So yeah, I definitely see some merit if you do want to take that risk. He could definitely come out and hit a 45 or 50 average for sure, given he has the agility. Tackling hasn't been too bad. He's had the worst game he's had this year has been a 2-miss kind of game. So there's definitely positives to it. If you need someone at that price bracket, go for it. Otherwise, happy fit to leave it as well. But a wing fullback playing in the back row, it's pretty exciting, right?
Yeah, I was a little bit sad that he was actually named in the back row this week because it meant he wasn't in the middle from the bench. And there was, look, they don't like to give duels from the bench, but it would have been nice to have a wing fullback mid-duel. Imagine that.
That'd been ridiculous, yeah. Yeah, the duel would have been hectic. I think a lot of people would have picked him up if that was the case. But Dylan Edwards there at 742. Really, guys, I had a few questions like, can we talk about guys that are going to be playing in round 16? If we are suggesting anyone as a potential buy this week, they are likely playing 16, and that's the reason why we're picking him up. So you got the Panthers guys, the Storm, the Roosters. I believe there's one more that plays all the way through to around 19. But they're the kind of guys we are targeting. Next week, we're going to be targeting guys that have just had their bye. So, a mixture of, I doubt Kalyn Ponga gets back into that Queensland side, but Ponga could be definitely a pickup next week, considering that they've had their round 14 bye and they have a good run of games without it. Same with those Eels guys. If you don't have a mixture of them, they have one bye in that next period in round 18. So that's how we play these buy, hold, risk it, sells guys. Is when we then move on. That target list I brought out the other day, they're the guys we are looking at in this one. And Dylan Edwards is one of those guys. I have zero expectation that they drop Teddy. So Edwards is still going to be completely safe, I believe, in this in being able to play in all the NRL games. What are your thoughts on him? He's 742. He's pretty expensive, but his ability to score well is unmatched at the moment in the wing fullback position.
Yeah, at the moment it's him and Latrell and Daylight pretty much. He's gone to another level this year in terms of fantasy because he's sweeping a lot more. He's always been the hard yards, huge run meters type of guy, but he's getting more involved in attack. And if you look, 7.4 tackle breaks on average. That's what you really love to see from a wing fullback. And he doesn't mind a try either. And he's got the ceiling we saw with that monstrous 98 about 2 months ago. And 60 last week without a try. I mean, it just shows you that he is one of those elite keepers this year. You are paying a premium, but if you have the money to go him this week instead of going for somebody who hasn't really hit form after their injury like Kiraz, he's a fantastic pickup.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what you're looking at there. One buy left. Going to be consistent. You don't have to worry about him. He has 235s in in his scoring there, and everyone was like, "Oh, he's a shocker, he's a shocker." But yeah, it's 35's your low. We've seen what Teddy's been able to do, so yeah, it's a good floor, guys. Let's go to your team, Scoop. So good week last week. Made some ranks. Got you 719. That was enough to go up plenty. General thoughts on how you went and where you might be progressing this week.
Yeah, it was a solid score. I managed to only have 12, which was a shame because I went Couchman to Burbo the week before, and then of course he gets injured. Couchman gets a 45 or so. That would have been really lovely to have in my team. But I mean, a lot of people did that as well, so it's not such a big thing. I'm considering doing something a little controversial this week and trading out a couple of green dots for some more green dots and playing with 16 this week. I'm considering going from Isaiah Katoa to Turpin to complement Damien Cook's buy.
Yep.
And also Payne Haas to Isaiah Papali'i, with Payne Haas potentially being managed a little bit through Origin. And Papali'i about as cheap as we'll ever see him. I think they're pretty solid trades. I just have so many mids missing in that round 16 buy with Tapine, Harris, DeBellin, and potentially Haas. I think that was just too much for me to handle. I could potentially sell Burbo instead of Isaiah Katoa, but I mean, with a break even of 40 and Milford again in the halves, I could lose another 25k this week.
Yeah, have you looked into much of where a lot of teams are at in terms of being able to field like a decent 17 or like a 17 with a couple of shockers? Have you had a look into many teams?
I haven't, but I did put up a poll in Game Day Chat a while ago. See how many people actually do have 17 playing this week. Let me see if I can grab it, because it was, I think most people are fielding 17, but there was a solid chunk that aren't actually going to be able to. So
even with trades?
Yeah, so by the look of it, 68 voted yes, they're going to field 17, but 15 said no, they're not going to be able to. I'm going to field 16. Then a couple with even less than that. So most are probably going to be able to field 17, but not all of them.
Okay, that's informative news for sure. So your squad, obviously Joe Tarpany's been a big one of recent time. We will speak about him a little bit later, but how good's this new role for him, hey?
Look, I've been justified as a holder. It was very painful having him miss that one game and then missing another game and then dropping like a 39 in between. It was very frustrating, but with Young in Origin and Horse now moving to the edge for a little bit, it just opens up really big minute role for him moving forward and getting it through Origin like last year. So all aboard. Yeah,
his BPM has been, obviously it's always incredible. So he finally got the minutes to justify it. And just a little shout out to us two lads, the boys on the, there's obviously a reason why we get some good views on this video, because the two boys are in the top 250. So very, very exciting. We need you to come a little bit closer to me. Hopefully I can stay there and you can move towards me rather than me coming back to the pack. But yeah, very exciting. Obviously in the private group here is where I'm looking at this. I'm currently in second, you're in sixth. So come on lads, catch up.
I seem to be sixth in everything at the moment. I'm sixth in the podcasters league. I'm sixth in another private league, and I'm sixth in that. So hopefully I can rise up above that starting from this week.
100%. Let's just talk about Karaz, why you mentioned him. I actually forgot to put him up here. But he's very cheap now, obviously, down at what, 470 odd?
Yeah, 469k. We've seen early this year and late last year that he is the type of winger that can be a very good scorer in fantasy. He's like Greg Marzu, not as big, but he is that tackle breaking, offloading type that gets a lot of meters. So he had a low game and an MCL injury affected score in about round 7. And then I think he came back probably a fraction too early. Didn't go quite as well. A bunch of 30s in there. But he's had the week off, so potentially he'll be able to fix that up and come out of the bye strongly. MCL does affect performance for a little while afterwards, so maybe that was what was causing those first couple of low scores coming back, but all it meant that he's just going to be a really low price for us at sub 500k, which I don't think we'll see for much more of the year. I think he'll push back towards about 600k and be probably not a keeper, but sit as a 4th or 5th wing fullback option that you can carry most of the year.
That's probably the best thing about him, isn't it? That would be close to his floor price. and should be able to have, he has that upside obviously with that 90 odd in that second game for the year, and he definitely could do that. And obviously has one by in round 17, round 16 number, round 19 number, which is going to be great for him. So yeah, if you're looking in that bracket, there's obviously not a lot of guys there. So yeah, he's the guy. Speaking about Joey Manu, obviously some people traded him out. Would you look to bring him back in if you did trade him out? He was sitting in the mid 80s, 90s in terms of ownership in the top 5K. He's down to 65% now.
Yeah, I think if you've got any sort of decent number of trades left, you have to get Joey Manu back. With Sam Walker delayed at least another 2 or 3 weeks from reports, Joe Manu in 5/8. This is the time where he dominates. Origin against teams that are a little bit tired or not backing up with all of their Origin stars. In the spine, potentially could play fullback round 16. We've already seen how well he scored this year at 5/8. And to be honest, I think you just have to get him in if you don't have him already.
Well, yeah, he's hit over 60 in those 3 full games as an average. So, yeah, very, very hard to miss him when he's under a 50 average by a good way. So, centre and wing fullback dual plays 16. Yeah, it's a pretty big in, isn't it? For sure. Let's go to IPap. So you're looking at bringing him in. I am actually a little bit concerned. So hear me out on this one. He's playing at the Tigers now. They're not using him anywhere near what he was going to be, what he was used like at Eels, and he was getting fed perfect ball from obviously Mitch Moses there. It's just not happening at all here. Tackle numbers are down a little bit. There are some games where he doesn't play the full 80. I completely understand that this is probably where his floor is at. Like, you can't see him hitting under like a 50 average. But is the upside actually there this year? I don't know.
Yeah, it is a little bit tough because he doesn't have as high quality halves feeding him ball close to the line. We saw last year, what did he average last year in terms of tries? So he was averaging about a 40% strike rate with tries, and I think he's only scored
one.
Just the one this year. So he isn't getting as big attacking stats, but I am reasonably happy with him still. Last game was a very strange one because the Tigers dominated the Cowboys, and he only got 15 tackles because you can't get tackles when you're sitting there watching conversions. So, look, I think that you can go either way on him or Bateman. Bateman's probably going to get through that work a little bit more, but maybe not have the ceiling of Papali'i. So I can completely understand if you want to avoid him and go for someone else, but personally, I think he will pick back up.
What do you put some of those low scores down to? The 44s, 38s? Because I look them back, and most of them are pretty low scoring games, like 18, 16, 24, 10. Like, they're pretty normal type of games there. Obviously, the one on the weekend, you can't really say much about, but the 52, 38, 44, 55, like, it's just, they're okay.
Yeah, the 38 against the Panthers came in about 60 minutes. Can't remember what that was from. I might have to look into that before I pull the trigger on the trade. But yeah, we saw that he started the year really well with 60, 50, 78, 60, 50. The Tigers weren't great, so he was getting a bit more in base and tackles. But yeah, I think that we just know him to be an elite fantasy option, and potentially he could go back to that shortly.
Yeah, okay, cool. Yeah, I'm just wanting to play a little bit devil's advocate because I definitely see him as a good option, but a lot of people jumped on him really early, and I was like, I just didn't feel like it was the right play. It obviously it didn't work out. I was unlucky with the 34, but I'm not expecting to get anywhere near his quality of the last 2 years, but definitely a little bit of value in there. Maybe he gets to like 760k, but yeah, that's where I'm at with Papali'i. Proceed with caution for sure. Someone you probably have to proceed with a little bit more caution is John Bateman, but you're looking, if you take out his under 70-minute games, which he won't get again, he got a 32 and a 34 in there, he's scoring in the mid-50s, so he's actually scoring better than what Papali'i is, and is 20k cheaper. So yeah, and then he was coming off a little bit of injury to come into it. You'd imagine that he's slightly improving as well. So, everyone's got Isaiah Papali'i way ahead of Bateman. I don't see it that way. But, yeah, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's definitely a fair call. He has, once he's got into this 80-minute role, he's got some solid scores. His floor is a bit higher than what we've seen from Papali'i this year. And plenty of scores at that 50 or above mark, and a couple of higher ones with the ceiling. So I think he is a good option. It just depends on what your opinion is of how it's going to swing between him and Papali'i, and whether Papali'i is likely to get rested or taken off 15 minutes early, like he has a couple of these games this year.
Yeah, he seems to be. Hey, because they can pop Katoa or these type of guys in that spot if they like, can't they? So yeah, I'm trying to work it out because obviously we've got Boyd who's the sell, and I've had to last week bring in a bunch of wing fullbacks, and we've got plenty of centers with Manu coming back with Lemuelu, Bill Smith. There's a lot of guys there, so it's like, well, can I trade Bird to just straight to one of these guys? And I just find it. I want to make sure that I get it right because I'm not super convinced on both of them at the moment. Plus, in my personal situation, I have Trent Leoro and Lukey, who both play in 16. It's like, well, do I actually need that edge as well? So I want them to be like a slam dunk pick, and I'm just not sure if either of them are. So if you're in a similar position to me, where you have guys that both play in 16 on the edge, I don't know, do you pick them up? That's the big question mark there.
Yeah, it's a little bit tough. If you do have guys that already play round 16, I'd be tempted to hold off until after their bye in round 17, because it is shaping to be a bit of a nasty one, a little bit more than we were expecting, because we're picking up all of these Bulldogs, potentially like Oluwapu should be in all of our teams starting this week, and potentially guys like Papali'i and Bateman and Kiraz and Okunbor. We're just going to load up, and especially if we have Hines as well, you're going to struggle to field 17 if you go for too many of them. So given that David Fifita is 5+ points ahead of anybody else, maybe you can potentially hold off and just grab him straight away when Origin is done.
It's a great call. Eli Katoa is next on the list. Someone I actually have some interest in as a returning player to the NRL Fantasy Analysis squad. What's the interest level on your end with Eli, being that little bit cheaper than the options we just mentioned?
Yeah, I kind of forgot about him as an option, but he did lose a fair bit of cash after that injury affected game in round 8, and then again in round 12 with that AC joint, I think it was. But he's come off the bye, had a bit of time to work on it, and he is named this weekend. Well, he's back down towards that only about 100k more expensive when he started, and coming off 2 reasonably good scores. So I think that he's actually a pretty decent option if you don't have the cash to go up to one of those or aren't convinced that they're slam dunk like we were talking about.
A big part of me wants to go Jack Bird to Katoa, bank some cash, and get rid of Tommy Talau finally up to Turpin. I have so much time for those trades. But yeah, I think Ellie, he got up to 634, so there's definitely some value there. And even at that time, we were talking about him being a 50-point keeper, and potentially a guy you hold all year. And then he did have that slightly lower score, and we're like, the big reason for trading him out was how many buys they had. Buy in round 9, buy in round 13, and then he obviously got the head knock. So he's definitely someone that he got his first try of the year on the weekend, and has 2 try assists. So pretty ridiculous for a guy of his stature, and I think he has upside under 553, definitely to make cash and hit you a 50 average. So if you need a cheaper edge, then he is the guy by far. Dave Klemmer. A lot of people still talking about him. I just haven't seen it yet, and I don't know if it's going to come. Like, he had the big minutes in round 1. He has to play those minutes for me, the 60+ minutes, for him to be of worth at all, because he went 56 minutes, 51 minutes, and got 42, 45. It doesn't excite me. He had obviously a big PPM game in round 9 there, and he just hasn't hit over 50. He has, 3 scores over 50 this year. It's just not enough for me.
Yeah, I think that he has lost a fair bit of cash, but given that he hasn't really hit those heights this year, you'd really want to see those good minutes from him now that Offa Hengawi is at the Eels. That's the theory behind it, and I think that we've just been talking about it for so long, given that he was on the bye, that we've convinced ourselves that it's going to happen, and I don't know if it will. We'll have to wait and see what his minutes are going to be like this weekend.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's the Joe O effect, but he hasn't been playing that big minutes either. So I just think his minutes, Joe, get replaced by someone else. And Klemmer, it's just a new team, new role, and he just becomes a little bit irrelevant. And maybe next year is where I'm at with him, but we'll see what happens this week. I just wouldn't be selecting him now, in hope. Anyway, Stafford Toa. We get to speak about him finally after his mammoth effort in round 12 there against my beautiful Cowboys. Beautiful low break even of 3 there. 570k, he just seems very expensive now because he was pretty consistent before that. There are people bringing him in. Would you look to avoid him at this point?
It's a very strange one because he showed he could be an absolute weapon But I mean, that was a very unusual game. So I don't know whether it will continue. He might end up being a borderline keeper option in the centers, but I mean, you're already buying him at borderline keeper price. I know at least one or two high ranked players who are chasing him, but it is definitely the risky move instead of the safe one.
Yeah, it feels like a point chaser. We got a 61 from him in round 8 where he got a try and a try assist with 7 tackle breaks, so that seems pretty large. But then he has a 47, a 41 are his next best scores, to go along with 37s, 26s. Like if he comes out and gets a 35 or something or a 45, you're like, it's not really like a 45 you'll cop, but anything less than that, it feels like a waste. So yeah, like he obviously plays, he only misses one more game, which is important, but yeah, it just seems like a risk to me. Someone who probably doesn't feel like a bit of a risk is Joe Tapine. The only issue with Joe is obviously the round 16 bye, and then the round 20 as well. Yeah, not great, but 705k, priced at 50, and I think he's going to go 65 plus if he gets the minutes, potentially over the next couple of weeks. Can you pick him up when he has a buy in round 16, or is it just so hard right now with, as you said, the mid section? We have so many of these guys like the Bellens, Harrises, Tapine, Horsburghs, that it's probably hard to pick up another round 16 go.
Yeah, look, he's a very good buy, but really only if you can field a strong midsection for round 16, because you're just adding another guy who won't be there in a couple of weeks' time. Like I have with Tarpanay already, Tohu Harris and Jack DeBellin. That's going to be $2 million just in the one position not playing. So look, he's a good buy, especially for head-to-head where it doesn't matter as much. But yeah, for overall, you probably want a really good plan for round 16 if you're going to go after him.
Yeah, all in on head-to-head. I completely agree with that. Scott Drinkwater, is he still worth picking up in people's sides? Just under 600k. Thankfully, he didn't burn me this time around after starting with him. But his scores have been terrific since round 8. His lowest of 33, a high of 75. So been hitting around that 50 mark pretty consistently. By next week, would you wait until 16, or would you be happy to pull the trigger now on a wing fullback?
That's a tough one, because that buy next week is pretty annoying. But his break even is of what, less than 20, so he could be 630 next week potentially. So I think you can buy him this week, particularly as he's just shown that he's getting more involved in the attack in the last little while. Things like Tom Dearden potentially being Queensland's 18th man, things like that. He's going to pick up a couple of kick meters in those in round 16 as well, you would expect. And overall, he just seems at the moment in a position that's really tough. He almost looks like one of the top couple of options, so I don't mind buying him.
Yeah, he's definitely the form play. The Penrith matchup in 16, like it looks worse. It looks bad until you see it's in round 16 when everyone's going to be missing it. Rabbitohs after that. Storm this week. So there's some tough matchups there, but he did score a couple of good ones against some decent teams. So what do? He came out against obviously the Eels on the weekend and did a job on them, but he'd been scoring fine even against some of the better teams. In Sharks, he's still got the 41. Roosters, we beat them in that one, 44. But like he's still able to score okay against some of the better sides, and we lost that game. We got pumped in that game against the Tigers, and he still got 57. So I think there's some safety in that as well. So either way, leave him or buy is fine. But I think a lot of us have a lot of wing fullbacks after last week, so that's that there. Fisher Harris, big break even, cheap price. Is he worth it this week, or can you even wait a week?
I would prefer to wait a week, but given that Isaiah Yeo played 80 in Origin, this could be the week that he plays 60 minutes and gets close to that and be a fantastic score and only sacrifice a little bit of cash. So I think mid-season, when he doesn't play with Isaiah Yeo, he averages something like 55.
Yeah.
So given how many minutes Yeo did play, even if he does back up, I expect it to really be a game that Fisher Harris comes out and dominates for the Panthers. So I'm more happy to buy him this week now. I was mostly interested in targeting him from next week, but it's swinging towards this week a bit more now.
I know Mark from the Amateurs is pretty keen on a good score this week anyway, but if you're sitting with, say, 10, 11, 12 trades right now, Fisher Harris is not a keeper. Would you just avoid him just because you're going to have to trade him out later?
Yeah, that's a tough one because, well, he's very likely going to sit as that 45 average guy for most of the year, and you really won't want that in your team at the end of Origin. It's a little bit like a cheaper version of Hopgood, where Hopgood will go amazing with all the Eels players out, injuries, and Origin selections. Until they've got their full squad back, especially with Offa Hengawi, he'll come back to the pack. Same with Fisher Harris. I think you can only do it if you've got a decent number of trades and need some more cash in your side potentially.
Yeah, and need a mid for 16. Just a reminder, guys, for that information bar that's next to each game. So that one there in round 5 where he played 21 minutes, he had that MCL injury, and that's why he missed the game. So it's always, the easiest way to get your information on potential injuries and stuff that they had is just on there. So the website just keeps getting better and better, which is awesome. Let's go to Chan. So obviously his best ever game, fantasy-wise, in 65-minute effort. So did it very efficiently. 485 now, low break even. Buying round 16, was he just a purchase last week and you can't really grab him now?
I think it depends on how many wing fullbacks you have, because as you said, most of us have got a lot at the moment, and especially preparing for round 16. If you don't have a huge overabundance of them and have mostly got yourself sorted for round 16, I don't mind it. But yeah, if you really need to be focusing on those guys who do play round 16, like your Kiraz's and your Drinkwater, I would go them over Chance.
I'd personally, I do own him now, but I'd personally avoid him. They're obviously a little bit more expensive. It wasn't like a knockout play last week. We did get very lucky. He played amazingly, and hopefully he had one try coming into that. And it was like that law of averages coming back to the mean there, that he would score a couple or set up a couple. And I just don't think that it's a play from here on. You could definitely prove everyone wrong and go out again and get another 50. But yeah, I just think it's unless as I said, unless you really need some wing fullbacks this week, then he would be the play. Other than that, you could go Okunbor or something like that, who's cheaper. Tohu Harris, 680k. Oh, yeah, and the last thing with Chanze is that he's not a keeper, so you're gonna have to trade him out as well. So that's that. Harris, if you don't own him yet, there's 60% the top 5,000 do. The other 40%, this is a question for you. What do you do with him at 680k? Likely going to average of 55 to 60. Is he still worth bringing in now?
I think he's a good buy anytime. He's one of the few guys I would look to bring in because he'll likely be a keeper all year. He's a little bit like Tapine, but probably a bit more consistent going forward, especially post-Origin. It's just the question of, can you field those middles in round 16? I think a lot of us are going to be diving into that in round 15 when guys like Hopgood, Offa Hengawi, Grieg, Fainu, Fisher Harris, Sofa Solomona are all either going to be playing or at least a bit cheaper and leveled out. So I think Tohu Harris is a solid buy this week, but only if you have a plan for round 16.
Beautiful. Yeah, it's an interesting one too with Samuela Fainu obviously not playing this week, but I definitely think he'll be on our target list for next week. Is that right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so keep that in mind for a mid that obviously is fairly cheap. And yeah, that's that. Let's go to Britain Nikora. So pretty expensive, 745, been scoring really well at 56. Do we look at him at all, or with obviously that one buy left in 17?
Look, Nikora seems like a final team guy to me. Somebody you pick up post-Origin to really gun up, a little bit like Fafita. But the thing is, he has been really gunned this year. Nico Hines has been going to him a lot more. And we've seen actually, as a result, the decline of Jesse Ramien, who's actually surprisingly cheap now, but I don't know if I'd even go to him because he's so far down. So look, I don't mind him, but when you've got guys like Elias Katoa, 200k cheaper, and potentially almost able to match him, I'd probably only look for him later.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's better options at this point, a little bit cheaper. Jacob Host, just to sell this week, 405.
Yeah, he's done his job, and he's about to turn around and start losing that cash, I think.
Did he do his job, though? I don't think so.
Yeah, well, what did he get? About 40k? That's better than nothing, but it's not real good.
Sorry, I just wanted to put that in there because I don't think we were too high on him. Yeah, he was like an okay option, but yeah, like everyone's saying, oh, he did his job. Did he? He got you 24 points in round 13. It's not that exciting. Sorry, I had to say it. But yeah, happy to sell.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, his break-even's higher than what he's been scoring the last couple of weeks, so get rid of him.
Okay, if you have both him and Isaiah Katoa, do you go Katoa first or Host?
That's a tough one. I think Host is going to score you a 25 this week, almost no matter what happens. Katoa could lose more money, but I mean, if he gets an attacking play or two, he could bust out a 30 or a 40,
Yeah.
something like that. So, you could swing either way, really.
It's hard for sure, yeah. I don't know. So yeah, Katoa, you're happy to just straight to sell him? We've already spoke about him. 421k, high break even. Cody Nikorima, on the other hand, if you own Katoa and Nikorima, Katoa first, right? If you don't,
yeah, definitely.
If you don't own Katoa anymore, would you trade out Nikorima this week, playing fullback again, or just hold as a number, like a 17 number this week, and then work it out next week? Lower break even.
Yeah,
still.
definitely. I think that's the play. He scored 30 at fullback last week, got a break even of 18. So, look, he's not going to do amazing things, but in a week that a lot of pushing and needing a trade or two to field 17, he's a good hold.
Yeah, he's been scoring pretty well. Obviously not super well on the weekend, the 30, but yeah, if you get some attacking stats, a try or a try assist or something out there, yeah, it's going to be good enough for him. Ramien, we mentioned him. He's obviously 473, a bit of a fall from grace. Still averaging 38 for the year, but that includes bigger scores at the start, where he got up to 628 actually, and then rocketed down all the way to this super low price of 473. Is he worth it as a guy that could sort of turn it around, or is he avoidable? Because he still scored 5 tries in there, the odd try assist, couple of line breaks in there. Like, I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I really need to see something from him first in order to get on. This year, he's just not the tackle breaking monster that he has been in past years. I think the past few years he's averaged about 4, 5, or 6. This year he's down to 2, and that's not going to hurt. That's not going to help his ceiling very much at all. So, look, he's definitely a discount option you can use in the centre, but do you really want to bring him in unless you're going to convince he's going to be that sort of low end keeper? I don't know if you do.
Yeah, and that's something I think that's definitely we haven't seen as much of, is those crab runs for the tackle breaks from that right to left side. Hey, you just hardly notice him in games, right? Which is obviously not good at all. Let's go to Matty Burton, just under 700k, 699, break even, manageable. Been scoring pretty well of recent time. Obviously, the last two 63, 61. Has a 40 in his game, obviously, but the Bulldogs, do you think that they'll improve a little bit? And do you think that he is a guy that could hit, maybe a 55 average from here?
He's definitely an option. I think you have to see... It's tough because with a couple of the New South Wales injuries, maybe he's 18th man again and misses 16. That'd be a really nasty thing to happen. So I think that with the Bulldogs returning to just about full strength or getting pretty close, he will improve and he'll do something more like what we were expecting at the beginning of the year. He has hit 63 out of his last 5 weeks, so I really don't mind him as an option. It's just that with a couple of those injuries, there is potential that he might miss 16 now instead of play it.
Do you think there's a decent chance he actually comes in and plays 14 and Hines drops out, or Hines goes to 6 or something like that? Like, do you think I think that's a decent chance too. Might be 20%.
To be honest, it could be, because Freddie didn't seem to want to use Hines that much. So I don't know.
Yeah, well, I think there was potential. He'd been training at hooker all week, and just with the stop-start game, that's why Coruscant ended up playing the full 80. Yeah, he wouldn't have gone on. He wouldn't have got on if Tommy didn't go down. I don't think so. Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, definitely something to worry about if you were to look at picking up Burton. Let's look at Nat Butcher quickly. Obviously, dual position is probably a little bit of an improver, considering a bunch of us have at least a few edges at this point, and we're looking at another edge with Isaiah Papali'i and these type of guys. Midsection, as you said, is very difficult to fill in round 16. He covers that, but are we just worried, obviously the expensive price, but are we just worried about how many back rowers and how many mids the Roosters have?
Yeah, if he was going to keep that role, I wouldn't mind him too much. You are paying quite a bit of money for him, so I'm not super thrilled on that department. But we haven't really seen Satili Tupanil doing a lot, or Angus doing a lot of in-game work and minutes-wise. So if any of those push up, Nat Butcher or Egan could be the one to lose out. I think it might be more likely to be Egan because he's the real impact guy, while Nat Butcher will do slow and steady wins the race. So he might still get good minutes and what we expect. But yeah, you're paying 730k for him, so you definitely want him to be keeping this output.
Yeah, definitely. We have 2 to go now. We're going to go to Josh King at 650. He has a 52 average, so of recent time he has slowed that down a little bit, but something I'm remembering is last year this definitely happened, right? He started slowing down his point scoring. The minutes has dropped just a tad as well, apart from last week with the 70. No 80-minute games like he did in round 1 with that 77. And that first 5 games was just incredible, right? He did have 41 to 49 in there, but 3 games from 69 and above. Do we expect him to get anywhere near those scores again, around that 60 mark, or is he just done?
Look, given that Welsh isn't playing Origin at the moment, I think it's not really an option.
He's been missing more tackles, hey, as well. So I think maybe it just happens, obviously, across the season. You come in, you're ready to go. You cop a few knocks, you get tired, and missed tackles and stuff can come into it when you're such a big middle forward, obviously. Just finished with Kini there, so he gets the fullback spot for the Titans. He played 13 minutes off the interchange in round 10, picked up 8 tackles, an offload in there, so got busy with 24 meters gained. I'd expect him to be pretty busy as the wing fullback, but with Brimson around the corner, we just avoid.
Yeah, if the round 16 wasn't a bye and he had 3 weeks instead of 2, you might look at him as sort of a Tom Chester type, but yeah, really not enough time.
Come on, mate. No one's Tom Chester. Don't give him that. I love that, man. I was so sad when he did his ACL. I hope he comes back well. Any parting words, Locke? I think that's it. That's us for today.
Yeah, go Queensland. Let's go on to game 2.
That's it. I'm done. All right, bye. Love yous.